So prior to moving to Southwest Florida where I live now, I lived in a place called Charlottesville, Virginia. And Charlottesville is a beautiful area. It's nestled in the foothill of the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia, and it's a gorgeous place to live. And one of the hobbies that I picked up while I lived there was mountain biking. And it struck me as something that I would enjoy. It looked physically challenging. It was a new skill. It would let me get outside and just kind of be free and explore. And so I got into mountain biking. And if you've ever either been mountain biking or seen videos of mountain biking, particularly in areas that are heavily wooded, which is really most of the areas around Charlottesville, there's a lot of big old trees, and you have these trails that are not much wider than the width of a bike tire. You know, some of these trails are maybe like 4 inches wide, 6 inches wide. There's not a lot of room, and you have trees and obstacles and roots and boulders and creeks and cliffs and everything on either side of these trails. And a lot of times you have just barely enough room for your handlebars to squeak through without hitting them. And as I was first learning to ride my mountain bike through these more difficult areas, I would see these obstacles in my way. There would be a big tree, or there'd be a boulder or a big root or something like that. And I did not want to hit those because I'd hit enough of them early on that I realized it hurt. It could damage you. It could damage your equipment. And so I really didn't want to hit these obstacles. And so I'd be going down the trail and I would see a tree that looked like it was going to be pretty close. And I would just focus on like, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree. Like, I really do not want to hit that tree. Well, inevitably, I'd hit the tree. And then a little farther down the trail, there'd be a big, they used to have roots that were spray painted orange so you could at least see them. So they were very highly visible. So it was an obstacle that was in your way. It was clear as day that it was there. And I would look at this root that was spray painted orange. It's like, don't hit the root, don't hit the root. Well, you end up hitting the root. And so what you learn is the more you focus on the things that you didn't want to hit, the tree or the roots or the rocks or whatever it was, it seemed like it was more likely that you were actually going to hit them. And so over time, I learned that if I just focused on where I wanted to go and not where I didn't want to go, I was far more likely to get there without damaging myself or my bike or anything else. I wasn't hitting the obstacles. I wasn't focused on the obstacles anymore. I was focused on where I wanted to go. I was focused on the path. And even though the path was narrow, if you just stayed focused on it, you could get there with no problem. And so what I also learned is that the better I got at doing this, the faster I could ride. I could ride more aggressively. I could have a lot more fun doing it. I was getting results faster. I was getting to my final destination faster. You know, I always had some kind of final destination in mind. There was an area that I used to ride, and there was a little park that had kind of the circuit workout station. And it was all outdoors, so I would ride my bike through the trails. I knew how to get there. I'd drop my bike for a while, get a quick workout in, get on my bike and come back. So I knew where I wanted to go. I knew the path to get there. Now, I couldn't see the final destination when I left, but I knew where it was. And as long as I just focused on the path I was going down, I could get there unharmed. But again, as I got more skilled, I would ride faster. And the thing with riding faster and gaining momentum and building competence is that those obstacles come at you even quicker, right? When you're riding slow, the obstacles come at you fairly slow. And so you have a little bit more time, but the better you get, the faster those obstacles come. There's not necessarily more of them, but they come at you a lot faster. And so I realized that this whole thing is really the way life works, in that we have a final destination we're trying to get to, or at least the next step in our journey. And there's all these obstacles that are in their way. There are these trees and these roots and these rocks and these boulders and these cliffs that can get in the way of us and where we're trying to go. And the more time we spend focused on all of those obstacles and all the things that we don't want to have happen, the more likely it is that those things will happen, because that's where our attention is. That's where our energy is. That's where our focus is. We're so focused on all the things that we don't want that we stop looking at the trail of where we're actually supposed to be going, because you can only focus on really one thing at a time. That's the whole point of focus. And if you're focused on the things you don't want, you can't be focused on the things that you do simultaneously. And that's why we end up hitting those obstacles and hitting those things that are in our ways, because that's where our focus is. And our mind does a very poor job of differentiating between things we want and things we don't want. What it knows is what we're focused on. What it knows is where our attention and our interest is. And that's what it's going to bring us. You know, some people call this the law of attraction, right? And that's kind of what it is. And some people think the law of attraction is this mystical thing that if you just think about things, they'll come to you. And it doesn't really work that way. But the way it does work is the things that you're focused on and where your attention and where your interest is, you're far more likely to get. Whether that's good or whether that's bad, that's just what's going to happen. And so when you focus on the things that you want, you focus on where you're trying to go, and you don't focus on the obstacles and the things that you don't want, you're far less likely to interact with those obstacles. And so I just want you to think about that as you're going through your day and you're going through your week, is where's your focus? Where's your attention? Are you focused on the trail, on the path, on where you're headed, or are you focused on all the things that you don't want, all the things that you don't want to hit? All the things that you don't want to have happen, right? The fight that you don't want to get into, the argument you don't want to have. You don't want to be broke. You don't want to be fat. You don't want to sleep poorly. You don't want to eat badly, right? Is that what your focus is? Because if it is, most likely you're going to experience more of those things, and it becomes sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I would just suggest to you that you really want to pay very close attention to where your focus is, where your attention is. And if you can keep your focus and your attention on knowing where you're ultimately trying to go, right? What's that final destination? But really focus on, that 2 to 3 feet in front of you, up to maybe 10 feet in front of you, of the things that you can control right now. Right now, what can you control, right? What do you want? What's the next step? What's the next 5 feet down the path? And how can you get there safely? And just focus on that. Don't focus on the tree. Don't focus on the root. Don't focus on the rock. Just focus on the path and what you need to do today, these next 5 minutes, these next 15 minutes, this next day, this next week, to get you a little bit closer. You're going to get there way faster with way less interruptions from all of these distractions that life throws at us. And so I hope you learned something from this. Again, that's just my experience firsthand. And I honestly didn't put the whole thing together until years later, really, that the more I focused on the things that I didn't want to hit, the more likely I was to hit them. And the more I just focused on where I wanted to go, I would generally avoid those things. So as you move through this next day, this next week, this next month, this next quarter, try to stay focused on the things that you do want and avoid putting any focus, any energy, any effort into the things that you don't want, because what you focus on, you will get more of. So what are the things in your life that you want more of? Focus on those, and the things that you don't want simply won't show up. Guys, I hope this message finds you very well. I hope someone finds some value in this, and I hope that you can put this to practical use in your daily life. I love you guys. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next one.